Hi, I'm Bass Pro Tour Angler Jeremy Lawyer, and I'm here today with Bassresource, and I want to talk to you about flipping around the spawn. And when you say flipping, that's not necessarily limiting you to anything. That just means that you're going to get close and personal and make accurate casts to whatever structure you're around on any given day on the lake that you're from. You know, that's going to be where you're going to make short pitches. You're going to be looking for bedding fish. You're going to be looking for fry garters. You're going to be looking for bass that are aggressive and running off the perch in the area, the nest raiders, as well as a new set of fish moving up. And something I like to do and utilize it with, and that's with a full-size jig right here in a perch color. You know, there's nothing that imitates a big old brim any better than just a jig, you know. This has got a lot of color in it, you can see. Really imitates a nice bluegill pattern here in the Midwest. You know, this is a structure jig by Freedom Tackle. And if you watched us earlier videos that me and the Bassresource did together, we talked about utilizing a really slow fall presentation with a 3/8 or a 5/16 ounce jig when the water was colder, below 50 or just barely above 50. Now we're around that 60-degree range. Fish are wanting to spawn. I like to beef that up a little bit. You know, this is the 1/2 ounce model. I feel like I can get a little bit faster fall rate. I want to tease that bass and bring it by his nest really quick, you know, while he's on the bed, and make him think he was going to get anything and kind of get him to react to the bait. And you need just a little bit heavier jig in order to do that. You know, if the water's super clear, I might back this down to just regular green pumpkin or something like a green pumpkin candy. Still gives a little bit of a hue of a bluegill off, and maybe take out the oranges and the blues. And especially if you're in the part of the country where your bluegill are more pale yellow, I might throw something, you know, like a Missouri crawl pattern that has more of the pale yellows and greens in it rather than a perch. But something that matches your hatch in your area is what I'm kind of looking for. You know, and I'm going to pair this on a rod that's really what I consider not a true flipping stick for me. I prefer a longer flipping stick, but this is Denali Lithium 7'6" flipping stick. And I like it whenever I'm gonna make really short flips, a lot of open water fishing, a lot of just flipping to the edge of a boat dock or to a piece of wood that's not really big like buck bushes or willow trees or anything like that. But the main thing is you want to use what's comfortable for you. I'm going to set this up with something like 20-pound Sunline FC shooter, you know, and it's going to go ahead and be a line that you're going to have a snap impact really close to the boat from. And so you want to have a line that's fairly large. You know, the fish more than likely are not going to be paying attention to the line anyway, so I like to get away with the heaviest I can. But as far as my trailers go, you know, earlier in the year when it's colder, it's warming up now, we talked about not having much movement in your trailer. I like to have quite a bit of movement now. You know, perches are real giddy, bass are really tuned in. You know, I like to throw something that really has a lot of movement on it, you know, and just thread it on there. You know, something like a Zoom Z-Crawl Junior, something with some big flapping appendages. You know, something that's really going to imitate a perch, you know, and just thread it on there and snug it up there tight. Now you can see here that the skirt's a little bit overpowering on that. A lot of things that happen around that spawn is a fish will nip at something but not really get it all the way. So I really want to fine tune this to make it a good profile and a perch appeal bait, but not have so much to where if he just nips at this much of it thinking he's going to do the job and run that perch off, that he doesn't get the hook. So what I'm going to do is just take and I'm going to start trimming this thing. And the reason that I don't trim it straight across the board before I put my trailer on there is I want the lengths of this to be just a little bit different. I'm just kind of hacking on it a little bit and shortening it up. Some of those are going to be the same length, some of them aren't. You can just see there, I mean, it's just going to absolutely go around and cut that however I want. And one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get these ones on the side just kind of out of the way a little bit, and what that's going to do is cause those to really flare out. You can see there, they really want to flare out sideways on the bait. And that's just going to give you more action. But you can see there, that really opened that bait up, gave it a lot more action, gave a lot more appeal. But more importantly, is all the base of this bait is around the hook right here. If he just nips it at the pinchers, then that's just gonna have to be how it is. But most of the time, you can get that fish to commit to a little bit more meat where that hook is by trimming that up like that, you know. Some other time, you know, you could really even put just a different trailer on it. If he's nipping at it and going crazy, maybe you've got just a little bit too big. You know, this is a big meaty trailer. Maybe a guy needs to go to something a little more slimmer. So if these are a little bit too fat and a little bit too big, you know, a lot of times something just downsizing to like a Zoom Z-Craw Junior, where you still get a little bit of bulk up here in the bait and just a little bit lesser of a trailer. You know, a speed crawl can do it as well. But there's no wrong way to do it. You know, match the hatch in your application. Now, one thing that you're gonna have to start thinking about also is that that's the time of the year when plastics are gonna start coming into play. You know, you're gonna have your good traditional Texas rig flipping style bait. I like to throw that around the spawn, especially something like this bait here. This is a Zoom Magnum speed crawl, and I like it because I can put a bigger hook on it and really get the hook exposed all the way down here at the end of the bait. Because a lot of times when they're on the bed or they're around the bed, they're gonna just try and nip the back half of the bait. They're not really committing. But this bait here is large enough that you can put a large profile off with it, an intimidating profile off to a bass on a bed, and put a large enough gamakatsu hook in it that it falls all the way to the end. It's going to be on about a big stiff Denali rod to where you don't have to worry about it. This is a 4-aught gamakatsu super line that's in this, and it's just going to be something to where your catch-up ratio is going to be pretty good considering the size of your bait with the size of your hook. If you throw something in there like a traditional lizard, there's a good possibility that that lizard's got 3 or 4 inches of plastic behind the bait and behind the hook to where that bass has a lot of opportunity not to get the hook. Something compact like this is something that's really, really good. This imitates both a perch and a crawfish. If you want to drag it really slow on the bottom, it definitely has the profile of a crawfish. If you want to swim it by and hop it really fast or just drop it on a bass's nose, if you put just a little chartreuse dye on these tentacles, and it looks just like a perch. So it's really a 1-2, but the water's getting warm enough now to where you can utilize the plastic. I think it really comes into contact when a bass bites it. He actually likes the feel of it in his mouth. And maybe the fact that everybody's through a jig all spring is what dictates some of that. But don't be afraid to start changing into your plastics when that water starts getting 62, 65, something to where the spawn's going on. Maybe there's a few fish even post-spawn, and it's just gonna be something that's really, really a great 1-2 punch that the fish haven't seen maybe because of the fact that everybody's been throwing a jig. So we've talked about pretty much everything around the spawn with 2 different 1-2 punches. You know, you got your traditional jig and your plastics are starting to come into play. So use an open mind. Don't be afraid to think outside the box. And I guarantee you these setups and some of these tips, if you'll use them with an open mind, will put more fish in your boat. Best of luck to you.